Imagine this. You wake up to a brand new day, but instead of dreading what might go wrong, you feel calm, confident, and completely in control. No matter what happens, whether it's a rude comment, a sudden setback, or even a big disappointment, nothing shakes you. Now, I know that might sound too good to be true, but here's the thing. It's absolutely possible. The secret lies in ancient wisdom that has been passed down through the ages, rooted in the teachings of Buddhism. Buddha himself once said, "You will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger." That line alone reveals so much. The battles we face are often within us, and that's where the untouchable mindset begins, by learning to master yourself. In today's video, I'm going to walk you through 7 transformative lessons that can help you build a mindset so strong that nothing, and I mean nothing, can hurt you. You'll learn to let go of what weighs you down, reframe life's challenges, and take control of your inner world. Trust me, by the end of this journey, you'll see life in a whole new way. All right, let's dive into the first lesson. Detachment is your superpower. Now, when people hear the word detachment, they sometimes think it means you have to stop caring. Like, you've got to become some kind of emotionless robot. But that's not what detachment is about. It's not about not feeling. It's about not clinging. It's about holding everything in life with an open hand, not a tight fist. Let me put it this way. How many times have you been upset because something didn't go your way? Maybe you didn't get the job you wanted, or a relationship didn't work out, or maybe you felt frustrated when your plans got derailed. It's because we often tie our happiness to things going exactly how we want them to go. And when life doesn't follow our script, boom, we feel hurt, angry, or disappointed. Now, let's bring in a little Buddhist wisdom here. Buddha said, "Attachment is the root of all suffering." Think about that for a second. The root of all suffering? That's a big statement, but it makes sense when you really break it down. Most of our pain comes from being too attached to people, outcomes, possessions, even our own expectations. Let me share a story. There was this monk, let's call him Tenzin, who lived in a small village. One day, a flood wiped out everything he owned. When the villagers came to console him, do you know what he said? He smiled and said, "I lost nothing because I never claimed anything as mine." Now, I know that sounds extreme. Most of us aren't living in a monastery. But Tenzin wasn't saying you can't own things or have relationships. He was saying that when you don't cling, when you don't define yourself by what you have, you free yourself from unnecessary suffering. So, how do we practice this kind of detachment in our everyday lives? It starts with mindfulness. The next time you feel stressed or upset, take a moment to ask yourself, what am I clinging to right now? Maybe it's the idea that someone should treat you a certain way. Maybe it's the belief that your career defines your worth. Once you identify it, you can start to loosen your grip. Here's a simple exercise. Imagine holding a handful of sand. If you squeeze it tightly, what happens? The sand starts slipping through your fingers, and you're left with less. But if you hold it gently with an open hand, the sand stays in place. Life works the same way. The tighter you hold on, the more you risk losing what you're trying to keep. Detachment isn't about giving up. It's about letting go of the illusion that you can control everything. It's about trusting that life will unfold as it's meant to. When you let go of that need to control, you actually gain something far more valuable: peace. Let me give you a real-world example. I have a friend, Sarah, who spent years trying to make her marriage perfect. She wanted everything to look like those Instagram couples. Picture-perfect vacations, romantic date nights, the works. But her need for perfection put so much pressure on the relationship that it started falling apart. When she finally let go of those expectations and started focusing on enjoying the relationship as it was, everything changed. They didn't just survive, they thrived. Detachment also applies to failure. How many times have you avoided trying something because you were scared to fail? Here's the truth. Failure is only devastating if you're attached to the idea that success defines your worth. When you detach from that idea, failure becomes just another stepping stone. Here's a practical tip. Start practicing detachment in small ways. If you're used to having coffee a certain way every morning, try changing it up. Skip your usual drink or use a different mug. It might sound silly, but these tiny acts of letting go train your mind to adapt. Another thing you can do is practice gratitude. When you're grateful for what you have right now, you're less likely to cling to things out of fear of losing them. Gratitude helps you shift from a mindset of scarcity to one of abundance. And finally, remember this. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. You can love deeply without fear of losing. You can pursue goals without being crushed by setbacks. And you can enjoy life without being enslaved by it. So, the next time life throws you a curveball, try this. Pause, take a deep breath, and remind yourself, I can handle this because my peace doesn't depend on this situation. That's the power of detachment. It's not just a Buddhist principle, it's a superpower we can all develop. All right, let's move on to the second lesson. Reframe pain as growth. Now, I know what you're thinking. Nobody likes pain. It's uncomfortable, it's messy, and honestly, it can feel downright unfair. But here's the thing. Pain is unavoidable, while suffering is optional. That's a powerful concept rooted in Buddhism, and it can completely change how you approach challenges in life. Let me start with a quick story. There was a young woman named Maya. Maya was living what many would call the perfect life. A great job, a loving partner, and a bright future ahead. Then, out of nowhere, everything fell apart. She lost her job, her relationship ended, and she felt like the rug had been pulled out from under her. For months, she was consumed by the why me mindset, which, let's be honest, we've all been there, right? But one day, she stumbled upon a Buddhist teaching that shifted her perspective. It said, pain is a teacher, not an enemy. Intrigued, she started to ask herself a new question. What can I learn from this? Slowly but surely, Maya began to rebuild her life. She realized the loss of her job pushed her to pursue a career she was truly passionate about. The end of her relationship taught her self-reliance and self-love. The lesson here? Pain isn't here to punish you. It's here to teach you. Every setback, every heartbreak, every struggle carries a lesson, but you have to be willing to see it. Let's break this down. Imagine a seed planted deep in the soil. For that seed to grow into a mighty tree, it has to break open. It has to push through the darkness and struggle its way toward the light. That process isn't easy, but it's necessary. And it's the same for us. Growth often comes from discomfort. Buddhism teaches us that pain is part of the human experience. It's unavoidable. But suffering, that's a choice. Suffering happens when we resist the pain, when we tell ourselves it shouldn't be happening. But when you lean into the pain, when you accept it and ask, what is this here to teach me? you transform it into growth. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. It's not. But there are practical steps you can take to start reframing pain in your life. First, let's talk about mindfulness. When you're in the middle of a painful experience, it's natural to want to escape it, right? But instead of running away, try this. Sit with it. Observe it. Ask yourself, where am I feeling this pain? Is it in my chest, my stomach, my shoulders? By focusing on the physical sensations, you can create some distance from the emotional intensity. Second, practice journaling. I can't stress this enough. When you're going through something tough, grab a notebook and write down everything you're feeling. Don't hold back. Just let it all out. Then, take a moment to reflect. Ask yourself, what's one thing I can learn from this experience? Over time, you'll start to see patterns. You'll realize that every challenge has left you stronger, wiser, or more compassionate. Here's another way to reframe pain. Look at it as a stepping stone. Think about some of the most inspiring people you know. Chances are, they didn't get to where they are without facing their fair share of struggles. Oprah Winfrey, for example, faced poverty, abuse, and countless rejections before becoming one of the most influential people in the world. Each challenge was a stepping stone on her journey. And let's not forget about gratitude. Now, I know it sounds counterintuitive to be grateful for pain, but hear me out. Gratitude shifts your focus from what you've lost to what you've gained. For example, let's say you lost a job. Instead of dwelling on the loss, you might feel grateful for the opportunity to explore new paths or learn new skills. One of my favorite practices is what I like to call the gratitude flip. When something goes wrong, ask yourself, what's one thing about this situation that I can be grateful for? It might feel forced at first, but with practice, you'll start to see challenges in a whole new light. Here's another story to bring this lesson home. There's a famous Buddhist parable about a farmer whose horse runs away. His neighbors come over and say, "What bad luck?" But the farmer simply replies, "Maybe." A few days later, the horse returns, bringing with it a herd of wild horses. The neighbors exclaim, "What good luck?" Again, the farmer says, "Maybe." The story goes on like this, showing that what we perceive as good or bad is often just part of a larger journey. The point is, pain isn't the end of the story. It's just a chapter. And sometimes, it's the chapter that leads to the most beautiful part of the narrative. So, the next time you're facing pain, pause and remind yourself, this isn't happening to me. It's happening for me. Lean into it. Learn from it. And know that on the other side of that pain is growth. Let's jump into Lesson 3. Control your inner dialogue. Now, I want you to think about something. How many times have you caught yourself saying things like, "I'm not good enough," "I always mess up," or "This is just who I am"? Be honest. It happens to all of us. And here's the kicker. The way you talk to yourself has more power over your life than just about anything else. Think about it this way. Your mind is like a garden. If you plant seeds of negativity, guess what's going to grow? Weeds. Lots of weeds. But if you plant seeds of positivity and self-empowerment, you'll start to see beautiful flowers bloom. The choice is yours. Let me tell you a story to illustrate this. There was a young man named Ravi who was constantly doubting himself. Every time he faced a challenge, his inner dialogue would go something like this. "I'm not smart enough to handle this," or "Why even try? I'm just going to fail." As you can imagine, this mindset kept him stuck. But one day he met a mentor who told him something that changed everything. The way you talk to yourself becomes the story you live. That hit him like a ton of bricks. Ravi realized he'd been telling himself the wrong story. So he started to rewrite it. Every time a negative thought popped up, he would pause and replace it with something positive, like, I can figure this out, or this is tough, but I've handled tough things before. Over time, his confidence grew, and so did his success. The lesson here is simple. If you wouldn't say it to a friend, don't say it to yourself. Now, controlling your inner dialogue isn't about ignoring reality or pretending everything's perfect. It's about choosing thoughts that empower you instead of holding you back. Step 1. Start noticing your inner dialogue. The first step is awareness. You can't change what you don't notice. Spend a day or two really paying attention to your thoughts. When you catch yourself thinking something negative, write it down. It might feel a little weird at first, but trust me, it's eye-opening. For example, let's say you're working on a project and you think, this is terrible. I'm going to mess it up. Write that down. Once it's on paper, it's easier to see how harsh or unhelpful it is. Step 2. Challenge the negative thoughts. Once you've identified a negative thought, ask yourself, is this really true? Most of the time, the answer is no. Negative thoughts are often exaggerated or based on fear, not facts. For instance, instead of thinking, I always fail, ask yourself, do I really fail all the time? Or are there times when I've succeeded? By challenging the thought, you start to break its power. Step 3. Replace the negative with a positive. This is where the real magic happens. Take that negative thought and flip it into something positive. Let's go back to our example. Instead of saying, this is terrible, I'm going to mess it up, try saying, this is a challenge, but I'm capable of figuring it out. It might feel forced at first, but the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. Step 4. Use affirmations. Affirmations are short, powerful statements that reinforce positive beliefs about yourself. They might sound cheesy, but they work. Science backs this up. When you repeat positive affirmations, you're literally rewiring your brain. Here are a few to get you started. I am strong and capable. I can handle whatever comes my way. I am enough, just as I am. Say these out loud in the morning or whenever you're feeling down. Over time, they'll become your default thoughts. Step 5. Practice mindfulness meditation. Mindfulness meditation is a game changer when it comes to controlling your inner dialogue. It helps you observe your thoughts without judgment, creating a little space between you and them. Here's how to get started. Find a quiet spot. Close your eyes and focus on your breath. When a thought pops up, and it will, just notice it. Don't try to push it away. Instead, label it. For example, there's a worry, or there's some self-doubt. Then, gently bring your focus back to your breath. With practice, you'll realize that you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts, and that realization is incredibly freeing. A quick story to inspire you. Let me share another story. There was a man named David who had a constant inner critic. It was like having a bully in his head, always telling him he wasn't good enough. But one day, he decided to give his inner critic a name. Let's call it Negative Nancy. Every time Nancy spoke up, David would say, "Thanks for your input, Nancy, but I've got this." It sounds silly, but it worked. By externalizing his negative thoughts, he took away their power. David went from doubting himself to tackling challenges with confidence. Your inner dialogue is like the soundtrack to your life. make sure it's playing something uplifting. Start small. Notice your thoughts, challenge the negative ones, and replace them with empowering ones. And remember this: the most important conversation you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. So, make it a good one. All right, let's get into one of my favorite lessons. Embrace amor fati. Now, I know what you're thinking. What's amor fati, and why does it sound like a fancy Latin phrase from a philosophy textbook? Well, it kind of is, but don't worry. It's simpler than it sounds. Amor fati means love of fate. It's the idea that instead of resisting life's challenges or complaining about what goes wrong, you accept everything. Yes, even the bad stuff, as part of your journey. But here's the kicker. It's not just about accepting it, it's about loving it. Now, I get it. Loving your challenges? That sounds impossible, right? I mean, how can you love losing a job, going through heartbreak, or dealing with setbacks? Well, stick with me here because this mindset is a total game changer. What does loving your fate really mean? Let's start with what amor fati is not. It's not about throwing your hands in the air and saying, "Oh, well, life sucks, so I'll just give up." And it's definitely not about pretending everything's fine when it's not. Instead, it's about choosing to see every experience, good, bad, or downright ugly, as meaningful. Here's the thing. Life is unpredictable. You can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond. That's the essence of amor fati. When you embrace it, you stop wasting energy fighting reality, and you start working with it. Let me tell you a story. There was a man named Kenji who worked tirelessly to build his dream business. He poured his heart, soul, and savings into it. But then, out of nowhere, the economy took a nosedive, and he lost everything. He was devastated. For weeks, he couldn't stop asking, "Why me? Why now?" But one day, he came across the concept of amor fati. It made him pause and think, what if this isn't the end of my story? What if this is the chapter that makes the story worth telling? So, instead of wallowing in regret, Kenji got to work. He took the lessons he'd learned from his failed business and started a new one. This time, he succeeded beyond his wildest dreams. Looking back, he said losing his first business was the best thing that ever happened to him. It forced him to grow in ways he never would have otherwise. Turning pain into purpose. Here's the thing about amor fati. It's not about loving the pain itself. It's about loving what the pain can teach you. Every setback is an opportunity to grow. Every failure is a stepping stone to success. Think about it like this. Imagine you're climbing a mountain. Along the way, you trip and fall. You scrape your knee. It hurts, right? But when you finally reach the top, those scrapes don't matter anymore. In fact, they become part of the story you tell about how you made it. That's what embracing amor fati is all about. Practical ways to practice. Amor fati. Now, let's get practical. How can you actually practice loving your fate? Reframe challenges. The next time something goes wrong, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" try asking, "What is this teaching me?" That small shift in perspective can change everything. 2. Start a gratitude journal. Even in tough times, there's always something to be grateful for. Start by writing down 3 things you're thankful for every day. Gratitude helps you focus on what's right instead of what's wrong. 3rd, meditate on impermanence. Buddhism teaches us that everything in life is temporary. The good times won't last forever, but neither will the bad. When you meditate on this truth, it becomes easier to accept life as it is. 4. Embrace the language of Amor. Fati words have power. Instead of saying, "I hate this," try saying, "This is part of my story." Instead of saying, "Why me?" try saying, "Why not me?" These small shifts can have a big impact on your mindset. A famous example of Amor Fati. Let's take a page from history. Have you heard of Thomas Edison? You probably know him as the guy who invented the light bulb. But did you know his laboratory burned to the ground when he was 67 years old? He lost years of work and millions of dollars. Do you know what he said when he saw the flames? "Thank goodness all our mistakes are gone. We can start fresh tomorrow." That's Amor Fati in action. Instead of letting the fire break him, he used it as an opportunity to innovate. How to apply Amor Fati in daily life. Here's a simple exercise you can try. Every night before bed, reflect on your day. Think about one thing that didn't go as planned. Then ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can this make me stronger? Write down your answers. Over time, you'll start to see challenges not as roadblocks, but as stepping stones. Another thing you can do is surround yourself with reminders of Amor Fati. It could be a sticky note on your mirror, a bracelet, or even a background on your phone with the words, "Love your fate." These little reminders can keep you grounded when life gets tough. Look, life isn't always going to go the way you want it to. That's just reality. But when you embrace Amor Fati, you stop fighting against reality and start flowing with it. You learn to see every challenge as part of your story, every setback as part of your growth. So the next time something doesn't go your way, pause, take a deep breath, and remind yourself, this is happening for me, not to me. When you do that, you'll find strength in the struggle and beauty in the chaos. All right, let's talk about something that challenges all of us, emotions. Whether it's anger, frustration, sadness, or even excitement, our emotions can feel like they're running the show sometimes, can't they? But here's the good news. You don't have to be at the mercy of your emotions. You can learn to control them. Now, I want to make one thing clear. Controlling your emotions doesn't mean suppressing them. This isn't about pretending you don't feel upset or stressed. It's about recognizing your emotions, understanding where they come from, and choosing how to respond. Here's a story to illustrate this. There was a man named Alex who had a terrible temper. The smallest things would set him off. Traffic, long lines, even a wrong coffee order. One day, his son said to him, "Dad, why do you let little things make you so unhappy?" That question hit him hard. Alex realized he was giving his power away to every minor inconvenience. So, he started working on his emotional control. He began practicing mindfulness, journaling, and deep breathing exercises. Over time, he noticed a huge change. He still felt angry sometimes, but instead of exploding, he learned to pause, breathe, and respond thoughtfully. Let's dive into some tools that can help you master your emotions. 1. The power of the pause. The next time you feel a strong emotion, whether it's anger, sadness, or even excitement, pause. Take a deep breath and count to 5 before you react. This small habit can prevent you from saying or doing something you might regret. 2. Breathwork techniques. One of the simplest and most effective ways to calm your emotions is through breathwork. Try the 4-7-8 technique. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7 seconds, and exhale for 8 seconds. This slows your heart rate and helps you regain control in stressful moments. 3. Label your emotions. When you're overwhelmed, take a moment to name what you're feeling. Are you frustrated, anxious, disappointed, Naming your emotions helps you step back and see them as temporary states, not permanent conditions. 4. Cognitive reframing. Let's say someone cuts you off in traffic. Instead of thinking, "What a jerk," try reframing it. Maybe they're in a rush to get to the hospital. This shift in perspective can reduce anger and help you stay calm. 5. Mindfulness meditation. Spend just 5 minutes a day practicing mindfulness. Focus on your breath or the sensations in your body. This trains your mind to stay present and less reactive to emotional triggers. Remember, emotional control is a skill. It takes practice, but with time, you'll find that the things that used to rattle you don't have the same power anymore. Now, let's talk about one of the biggest energy drainers in life: worrying about things you can't control. Sound familiar? Maybe you've spent hours stressing over other people's opinions, what might happen tomorrow, or something that went wrong in the past. Here's the truth. No matter how much you worry, you can't control everything. But you can control how you respond. And that's where your power lies. Imagine 2 circles. The smaller inner circle represents the things you can control: your thoughts, actions, and attitude. The larger outer circle represents everything you can't control: other people's choices, the weather, or the past. When you focus on the inner circle, you feel empowered. But when you obsess over the outer circle, you feel frustrated and helpless. The key is to shift your focus to what you can control. Let me share a story. There was a woman named Clara who was constantly stressed about her coworkers. She couldn't control their behavior, but she let it ruin her days. One day, her therapist said, "You can't change them, but you can change how you respond." That advice changed her life. She started focusing on her own work, setting boundaries and letting go of the need to control her coworkers. The result? Clara felt lighter, calmer, and more in control of her life. Practical steps to focus on what you can control. 1. Make a control list. Take a piece of paper and divide it into 2 columns. On one side, write down everything you can't control. On the other side, write what you can control. For example, can't control other people's opinions. Can control how much effort you put into your work. Keep this list as a reminder when you start feeling overwhelmed. 2. Practice mindfulness. When your mind starts racing with worries, bring yourself back to the present moment. Focus on your breath, your surroundings, or even the taste of your coffee. Mindfulness helps you stay grounded in what's real right now. 3. Set boundaries. If someone's behavior is bothering you, set clear boundaries. Remember, you can't control their actions, but you can control your response. When you let go of what you can't control, you free up energy to focus on what truly matters. All right, we've saved the best for last. Build an unshakable identity. This lesson is about knowing who you are at your core, so that no external event, criticism, or setback can shake you. Here's the thing. Many people define themselves by external things: jobs, relationships, or achievements. But what happens when those things disappear? If your identity is tied to them, you're left feeling lost. Buddhism teaches us that our true self isn't defined by external labels. It's about your inner values, your character, and your essence. Let me tell you about a man named Arjun. Arjun built his entire identity around being a successful CEO. But when his company failed, he felt like he'd lost himself. Through self-reflection and Buddhist teachings, he realized his worth wasn't tied to his job. He focused on who he was at his core, a kind, resilient, and creative person. That shift changed his life. Steps to build an unshakable identity. 1. Know your values. Spend time reflecting on what matters most to you. Write down your top 3 values and let them guide your decisions. 2. Practice self-acceptance. Stop comparing yourself to others. Embrace who you are, flaws and all. Self-acceptance is the foundation of a strong identity. 3. Set boundaries. When you know your values, it's easier to say no to things that don't align with them. Boundaries protect your energy and keep you true to yourself. 4. Affirm your worth. Create affirmations that reinforce your identity. Say things like, "I am enough," or "I define my own success." When your identity is rooted in your inner values, no external event can shake you. Remember, building an unshakable identity isn't about being perfect. It's about knowing who you are and standing firm in that truth. When you live from your core values, you become resilient, confident, and untouchable.